And welcome to another live edition of Blacklisted Radio. It's the 11th day of January 2015. My name is Doug Owen. I'm the senior editor of BlacklistedNews.com. This is actually the first show of 2015, so it's good to be here. Welcome to it. It's already shaping up to be a very, very interesting year. We are going to talk about that. So much to really get into. First off, we are doing this show in a new time slot for you out there listening to the live broadcast that did receive the bat signal. We're doing this thing 8 p.m. Central Standard Time from now on. Let me turn down the recorder a little bit. That's hot. Not hot like great, like awesome. Not that kind of hot, but the audio is a little bit hot. It's okay. Let me see. We'll just twist that and turn that dial, and we should be rocking and rolling. All right, good. Live radio. The fun thing about doing live radio is that it's spontaneous, but the hard thing to do is really commit yourself to a time slot. And so we thought it'd be a lot easier. We, collectively, the family, and I decided that it would be a lot easier to do the shows when we decided to go independent, if you will. And I guess that was in 2013. We did that. And at the time, it seemed like Saturday morning at 10 a.m. would be a great time to do the show, get it kind of out of the way before the weekend started, because, of course, just like most people, that's when you do the most work. The weekend is when you do all the work that you can't do during the week because you're out there wage slaving and, the other things that I do, like trying to run BlacklistedNews.com and aggregate news, keep myself pretty informed, and in that I can be a good editor and publisher and provide news that people find relevant and interesting. So that does take some time out of your day. So very hard to really commit to doing things on the weekends because you have to do other stuff, honeydews. So I know most of you out there can relate to that. So we've decided to move the show to this Sunday format, which I think will be good for two reasons. One of which, it will be a lot easier for me to do the show, and I'll be awake, which is, I think, a good thing as well for the listeners. A little bit more aware. Sometimes it's just, I find myself kind of in a daze. Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Through the show, and you're just, am I awake? Did we really do that thing? Yeah, there's a podcast. We recorded it, and usually it's pretty good. Not to, pat my own back, but, the show's not too bad considering we're doing it at that time. So I think that this will be more advantageous. I'll be more lucid. And, of course, it's a weekend wrap-up, and it will provide a podcast for Monday morning for all of our commuters, and that is probably the primary base of listeners, people that are, doing other things when they have time. They put this on in the background, maybe somebody going to and fro work. That's where we primarily hit people, because this is theater of the mind, not visual, television or video. So, it might be a dying art to do podcasts, but I think they are becoming more and more popular. And, it's pretty interesting. Some of the people that, kind of comment about when they're listening to the shows. Had a gentleman reach out and said that we had kind of touched on some topics, that, were kind of near and dear to people that were at a card game, and got some of the guys there listening. So, a poker game, it's interesting to find out the different places that this podcast ends up and how it ends up in people's ears. But Monday morning seems like the time you'd want a brand new podcast and really kind of, getting yourself on a informed, even footing before you hit the water cooler in the morning to talk with all of your friends about the crazy stuff that's happened over the weekend. So those two things combined really led to the ultimate decision to move this show to this 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. That is 9 Eastern, as well as 6 on the Pacific Coast, Western. And for all of you mountain timers out there, the few, the proud, Actually, there's many of you that are in the mountain time range. It's just 1 hour off, so it will be 7 p.m. So if you can figure it out, it takes people a while usually, and that's one of the reasons I'm not too turned off by the lackluster response in the chat room. But there are some people that are coming in, so that's good. That means that at least initially some of the people that are following the show, and it's important that you do it through Spreaker or maybe through Twitter, through our newsletter, so that way you get up to the minute or at least within a few hours notices that there are live shows and new shows. They're available for you, and doing this show at this time I think will allow for more guests, more people to be interested in maybe having a dialogue that's not quite so early in the morning. It's really, I've reached out to, I don't know how many people in 2014 that decided they didn't really want to do the show live, so that kind of, limits the amount of people that are going to hear the show. And I like doing things live to tape, always have. So we can record and do shows pretty much at any time we want. And record those and distribute them, but I don't know. Maybe it's just that the nostalgia. I like doing the live radio aspect to it. So bringing guests on and doing pre-recorded interviews or recording interviews and then posting those. Nothing wrong with it. Most podcasts are put out that way. So not to disparage any of the people that do it that way. It's just maybe one of the few differences between what we do and what a lot of other people do. And I think our take is completely independent and different, and the way we do this show is too. So for you out there listening, you know that. That's why you're listening to this show. We don't have millions of dollars to hire professional PR people. So if you're listening to this show, you probably are doing so because you want to, and you're already here. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this show and supporting it as we now go into 2015. What a year it is already shaping up to be. I want to talk about Paris, obviously, and the response to this terrorist attack. There are a lot of things that are happening right now that are going to be really pushed forward. We're going to talk about some of them by the White House, by the European Union, by British security forces. Right now, we have the SAS troops now patrolling the streets of Britain as Al-Qaeda has warned of terror cells being activated. So a lot of people are really worried about the potential for Al-Qaeda, who now has a new focus. If you listen to the narrative, it is that the terrorists that swear allegiance to ISIS, ISIL, IS, that are, we can call them radicals or jihadist, whatever. I know a lot of people get upset about using those terms because it indicts others that are not religious zealots. Somebody firebombs a church. It doesn't mean that they're it's like trying to peg them as terrorists because there's a political footing, even though it might have been something political that got somebody to act in violence. It's not always because it's really politics. A lot of the times it's just because these people are desperate, not well informed, and are looking for some kind of meaning in their own lives. That's why it's easy for intelligence agencies and the FBI, as of late, getting a lot of attention for finding these people and then setting them up and using them as patsies in a number of operations. So first and foremost, the response to the Paris shootings, and if you've been under a rock, you may not have heard, but there has been a terrorist attack. That is what it is deemed by the, a few terrorists, three of which we know, and the British intelligence agencies knew quite well. And apparently, as far as I know, there's still a missing girlfriend that the authorities, Interpol, and just about every police and intelligence organization across the globe is looking for them, at least Western intelligence agencies. So it will be interesting to see what she has to say if we hear anything from her, but as of late, we haven't heard much. The response, there have been a few attacks. A German newspaper was just hit with a firebombing, and read that a couple French news agencies have been evacuated because of bomb threats. So, the groups that are coming out, the thousands, tens of thousands of people to support the newspaper, though most of them did not support it when it was unpolitically correct to do so. Only it posthumously have so many of these supporters come out for this French satirical paper, Charlie Hebdo. And, it's odd because the relevance of this newspaper was almost nil. And I only say that because it was bankrupt, social relevance, satirical comedy, or rather comics, illustrations like that. They just don't make that much money. It's really hard. I mean, The Onion does a pretty good job, but according to most, the recent reports, it was basically financially bankrupt, and the editors were only meeting once a week, and so very limited in the scope of what they were doing. But I guess that's not really the point. I guess my point would be that the political significance of these cartoons, of putting Muhammad in a character cartoon form in print and digital media, is really, I don't even think it's pushing freedom of speech, although that's what this debate has become nationally and even globally, the right to free speech. Charlie Hebdo, I don't really have an opinion of their comedy or their opinions. I think that everybody is and has a right to their own, and they should have the right to espouse them freely. But when it came to free speech, they had their tent. They fired editor for anti-Semitism, and they really like to poke fun at the Muslims. And they had their taint, or their taint. They had their tint rather, and I'm sure they had that too. But they had their own spin, and they're very, very pro-Israel in their approach. Although I think that they did poke fun. I mean, even if you're a diehard alternative media fan, social conservative, or even a God forbid, a libertarian, somebody out there that dares to question the validity of the state, you could be considered one of the few people that actually consider free speech a virtue. Civil libertarians are one of the few groups that you hear in any kind of, I guess, official platform here in the U.S. or real political party. Not that it's a very successful one. So being part of the Libertarian Party and voting Libertarian, I guess it says, hey, it's a great way if you do it, and I have always done it just to say that I don't think that anybody else suitable, or that there is anybody else suitable for the job, and that's why you're going to vote Libertarian, because it's almost pointless to do so in a two-party system that we endure today. And part of that is, this whole belief that if we get outside of that system, that we will no longer be able to, things won't work. That if you dare to vote for somebody that's not part of this, these groups, that you're not going to be able to affect change. That it's ineffectual, and you're just wasting your votes. So every once in a while, you find things like this Paris attack that get people back on board with needing government, and tens of thousands of people have now spoken out. It's interesting timing considering that there is such a huge backlash to Islamic integration, and I wouldn't call it Islamophobia because I think that's a false term. I think that people don't have unreasonable fears of Islam, and that's what a phobia is. It's a unworthy or unreal threat. It's one that's not real, that is just manifested in your mind. And I think if you're worried about groups of people attacking you, and you live in a community that has whatever demographic it is that's more violent, then that's not racism. It's just properly identifying people that are a threat to you. So in these times, there are lots of people that are looking for answers to what's happening, and to a lot of societal plight, a lot of lip service from people in power, and feeling less and less like they affect it. Interesting, poll came out of Pew Research earlier this week, saying that the poor primarily do not vote and do not believe that the government serves them. Primarily, they do not believe that they are more apt to believe that government is corrupt and that voting is pointless. And it almost manifests itself, because if people really do believe that, I think that, I know some of you out there are probably raising your hands right now saying, yeah, I feel that way too. That if we get to a point where, only the people that, are doing well, the fewer and fewer well-off people in this country are the only ones that are voting, and the only ones that are becoming informed. That's a sad aspect to all of it, is that when you think that everything's corrupt, it makes it really easy to not do any research and just say, well, it's kind of pointless and I'm not going to participate. So that's not unique to the United States, not just the poor in this country that are not turning out to vote. And I know some of you are saying, well, what's the point in voting when the vote is rigged? There is vote rigging, but if you can get somebody into a party, there's only so many people to vote for. Some political positions, there's no one except there's only one person running, and they're just winning by fiat. People don't even necessarily have to know who they are. They just pick them because there's no other choice. So I guess my point is that people feel less and less like they're part of the system in this country, and that is somewhat scientific. And in France, in Paris particularly, you have a huge anti-sentiment to the forced integration and the massive amounts of social services, the bankrupting of those services by groups of people that are not vested in the system. I think that one of the things about having huge, quick, massive amounts of immigration is that you have a lot of people that are displaced, and you have a lot of people that, rather than saying, well, it's because this is a free market, we should all compete in a system that is fair and free to all. You have people that are, and most of us are like this. You're a protectionist and you want to protect the things that you have and the current lifestyle that you live. And you see these things as direct threats, whether it's illegal immigration, legal immigration, too much immigration. It's become a big focal point and a huge discussion, especially in 2014. And I think it will continue into 2015 as things turn for the worst. And the government's kind of preparing for that as well. So I do want to talk about Paris, but before we go there, I do have some updates. Maybe we should just do those before we start talking about the fusion centers. The response is as you thought, and I'll bring up some anomalies and some other I think very important facts that raise very, very controversial questions about what absolutely happened here. But it's no surprise. The U.S. is on its way to save the day. Obama is going to hold a global summit, and I totally messed it up. But it was Anwar al-Awlaki that was at the State Department dinner. I don't know why I always want to say that it's, I think it's some other terrorist. I noted it on the Doomcast, and I noted the faux pas. But nonetheless, these guys have direct connection. The terrorists, of course, they were inspired by the infamous Anwar al-Awlaki. And you can do all the research you want into this man, but tenuous ties, or better than tenuous ties, to the CIA and other radical Muslim groups, other intelligence agencies. And he's quite a character, and he has inspired so many. But anyway, the U.S. is going to hold a global security summit. Now, of course, they're going to be talking about the real threats, like Russia, like, I don't know, the BRIC nations, economic instability. He's got a lot of agendas this week. It's actually a pretty power-packed week for the Obama administration, and the government has a pretty interesting and notable shakeup in the power position. So we'll talk about that. But they're going to have this big summit. The gathering of Justice and Interior chiefs are going to descend on France. 17 victims of the Islamist gunmen, that's what they're calling them now this week, in the worst assault on its homeland security in decades. This out of course, I think this is the Washington Post. Well, we will bring together all of our allies to discuss ways in which we can counteract this violent extremism that exists around the world, quote unquote, Holder says, and I've got the quote. And of course, it's just, I thought this guy was gone. I thought Holder had retired. Apparently, they don't have a replacement for him yet, and he's still out there doing PR and pressers for CNN and speaking to this, or for the Obama administration. I mean, add insult to injury. The administration revealed their intention to hold a summit entitled Countering Violent Extremism in February, regarding how the U.S. and other governments can combat violent extremism and domestic radicalization, which comes right back down to, of course, more NSA surveillance, more Department of Homeland Security money, and all this timed conveniently with the $40 billion annual budget for the Department of Homeland Security. So you need money? Nothing like a terrorist attack to get people on board with those financial obligations. And, they're not going to stop the government from running. I don't care if it's Boehner, Ted Cruz, or any of the other people that in the Republican Party primarily that will, they keep promising us that they're going to stop Obamacare and they're going to stop the government from doing all these things. But Mitch McConnell and the rest of the crew, not going to stop all of the money that's going to the Department of Homeland Security, which, obviously we've got big problems when they are aware, and this came in, that the French surveillance of these terrorist brothers had been going on for years. And just 6 months ago, this is a common meme that flashback to the Boston bombing. We just celebrated, I hate using that term, we just witnessed the anniversary, rather, of the bombing that happened during the Boston Marathon. So, the same MO. The U.S., as well as the Russian and Chechen government, were aware of these terrorists. Everybody was pretty much aware that these guys may be potentially radicalized terrorists. The only person that didn't know was their mother. But she had talked to the FBI, and it basically admitted, the government did finally release a statement saying, yes, we had these guys in our sights, and we deemed that we didn't have any kind of intel. So, those kind of parallels raise red flags for me when you see, the multi-billion-dollar global surveillance in action, and these guys actually being pegged by it. It's just a glaring example of why these things don't work. Some of you out there might say, well, they kind of work, Doug. At least they knew these guys were terrorists. Interestingly enough, they had just recently gone to Syria for training, but at the same time, they were on the TIDE system, which is the Terrorist Identities Data Mart environment. If you're not aware of it, don't feel bad. Most people aren't. I wasn't. It's a database of known or suspected international terrorists. U.S. counterterrorism sources told RT, on a condition of anonymity. And RT is a real news organization. Some of you out there might not think that they are, but I think that they are. And I think that there's probably a really good chance that, and I'd like more confirmation, but that these terrorists, of course, Sharif Kouachi, 32, and his older brother Saeed, which were French-born sons of an Algerian family, and they were both logged into this system. Sources also said that the brothers were considered to be dangerous enough for their names to be sent to the FBI's terrorist screening center, which put them on a no-fly list, the most restrictive of these lists. So apparently, it's not too hard to get yourself some AK-47s, an RPG, a rocket-propelled grenade, when you can fly back and forth to Yemen. And these stories have changed so much. Okay, and of course, leaving your passports when you're trying to make your get-off or your getaway doesn't seem very smart either. I mean, for international terrorists that were well-trained, the military training, the calm composure during this operation, and that's what I think it was. It was absolutely an operation. Speaks for itself. Rather than, debate some of the video forensics, the lack of blood or of a police officer being shot, and other things that I think that are anomalies with the case that are, huge red flags, especially considering that all of these videos came out the day of, and there was no censoring. The government would, we're trying to find video footage from 10 years back, years upon years, that have been declassified or been classified for lesser events, and the fact that these things were put out there, I think, is questionable. At least, it's not definitive, but it's questionable why all this was allowed to be put out there. And news organizations, which we know do have liaisons with the CIA and other, outlets like the New York Times, admittedly take information like the stories that they got from Glenn Greenwald, and they were vetted, and a bureau chief looks at those. They actually have the agency go over these news articles and determine whether they'll be a national security risk. If they are deemed to be a national security risk, you're not going to read about it in the Washington Post. You're not going to read about it in most of the, mainstream media outlets, the quote-unquote real media. And I hate to use those terms, but that's what people think, the sanctioned, the sacrosanct outlets for media. Washington Post, LA Times, Associated Press, Reuters. Those are things that, or companies that people believe are real. And I think that most of the people listening to this podcast realize that, although, people that write for all of these agencies, there's nothing wrong with it, but news and the history of newsmakers being in bed, working with and or assets of intelligence agencies, not just in the United States, but around the world, everywhere. If you go to RT, you're going to find a couple FSB. How could it not be that way? So it's just naive to think that, this is all getting out to the people without, if they wanted to censor this, if they wanted to have a shutdown of this video, we would see what we saw with Charlie Hebdo's cartoon depiction of Muhammad. Okay, nobody was showing those videos or those pictures. They were pixelated. It was a big problem. So, watching police officers be assassinated, that's no big deal. We'll put that out there. Anyway, so lots of prior knowledge and definitely some parallels to this, MO that the government knows about these guys, and I'm sure we're going to hear that the Russians were following them as well, and they were telling the government, the Syrian government may have already known that they were terrorists and had told the U.S. I mean, the story will probably blossom in a lot of different ways. But anyway, they were with Anwar al-Awlaki, who was a radical spiritual leader linked to several of the 9/11 attackers, the Fort Hood shooting, and the attempted Christmas Day bombing of an airliner who was a guest at the Pentagon just a few months after 9/11. Pentagon officials confirmed to CBS News. And you can get this off Wikipedia. The ever infamous Anwar al-Awlaki and his ties to very big terrorist events that happened in this country. Now, it would be naive to believe that with all of the, with all of the trillions of dollars that have probably gone into telecommunications and international banking, it would be easy to find these guys. Just like you would think it would be easy to shut down funding for terrorist organizations, considering that every penny that you put into a bank these days has to be accounted for. I mean, it's very, very hard to have any kind of funding for terrorist operations going through the SWIFT system. But, we're going to touch on another story here coming up that really does shed light on how silly that is. But, I mean, the fact that ISIS has now opened up a bank in Mosul, okay, it should be pretty easy to get these guys. They have a storefront bank. Before you know it, they're going to have an investment bank, and they'll start their own poppy production. I'm telling you, I mean, I'm saying that in jest now, but this is 2015. 2017, we'll probably be looking back, and these guys will be in the UN Security Council, and they will be the security force for Kurdistan. That's some pretty outlandish things that probably won't actually come to fruition, but it wouldn't surprise me these days. It really wouldn't. Anyway, another interesting anomaly. A police commissioner likely taken out upon discovery of evidence not fitting establishment narrative. This is some of the news reporting that you're going to find in the alt media. I think it's interesting nonetheless, but the headline's a little leading, just because you happen to be working on by all metrics, a false flag. I mean, by the gunmen themselves saying that they're from Al-Qaeda in Yemen, and actually being, French-born and training in Syria, not being Al-Qaeda in Yemen necessarily. That is, by all measures, a false flag. Blaming some other nation state for, or giving them the credit for your terrorist attack. So, and that was one of the things they made very clear, that that's who they were, and that's where they're from, and that's why they left their IDs there, I guess. It makes sense to me. But anyway, shockingly, Police Commissioner Helric Fredo, 45, reportedly killed himself with his own gun while preparing a report just after meeting with a family member of a victim who was shot during the recent attack, which took place at the offices of the satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo. Although reports claim that Helric Fredo suffered from quote-unquote depression and burnout, some like myself, who's this? I forget where I picked this up from. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I think that, they might have been conveniently suicided. Maybe, sod, when you start seeing people getting depressed about, right when you're in the midst of probably something that would be career defining. Okay. I mean, this is the biggest thing that this guy's ever done, as far as a career move, something, at least the most, visual, people actually, giving credit to this. I mean, you're getting TV time, you're going to get a lot of, face time, for being this police commissioner. So if there's ever a time for you to be in the limelight, you would think that would, be the time that you would not kill yourself. It would be afterwards or beforehand. But, no real evidence, but I just wanted to throw it out there. Of course, this all brings up a lot of memories of Project Gladio. If you're not familiar, Operation Gladio was a clandestine North Atlantic treaty organization stay-behind operation in Europe. The Operation Gladio is the Italian branch, but this was actually spearheaded out of Belgium, and the strategy was a strategic tension. They call it the strategy of tension, where basically the claim is by several high-ups, Giulio Andreotti, who was a Christian Democrat prime minister who publicly recognized the existence of Gladio, this operation, back in October of 1990. He spoke of a structure of information response and safeguard with arms caches, reserve officers. He gave to the commission, the parliamentary commission led by Senator Giovanni Pellegrino, in charge of investigations that looked into the killing of 622 civilians who, according to him, were part of Gladio. That he also stated 127 weapons cache had been dismantled, and said that Gladio had not been involved in any of the bombings committed through the 1960s to the 80s. So basically what happened was there was a lot of, pointing the finger and saying that these horrible bar-bent massacres that were taking place in the 1980s were part of this far right group called Westland New Post, were part of Operation Gladio. And this strategy of tension is one of the highlights of Gladio, and that is basically killing and maiming citizens, and targeting school buses, targeting religious centers, targeting public shopping squares, trying to, basically get the people to hate any of these separatists and others that were, anti-NATO, saying, look, this is, this is a takeover. People just like those today that are saying, look, the government's been taken over. This is, we should fight back. Now, there was the stay behind army, which was Project Gladio, which was completely secret. So the government didn't admit its existence. So they're like, no, there's no Belgian government here. There's no secret government running everything that's secretly murdering people. According to documents, over 1,000 people or summary executed during Gladio. Nordewells, communists, Labor Party leaders, union leaders, anybody that was basically opposition to the Western Front at the time were targets in Operation Gladio. So a lot of people, Portugal's role was very interesting. In 1966, the CIA set up Enginter Press, which under the direction of Captain Ves Sirac, who had taken part in founding of the OAS, ran a secretly stay-behind army and trained members in covert action techniques amounting to terrorism, including bombings, silent assassinations, subversion techniques, clandestine communication, and infiltration and colonial warfare. Germany's role was very not not so much highlighted, but it was very prominent in Gladio, though they don't usually get the attention for it. U.S. intelligence also assisted in setting up a German stay-behind network. CIA documents released in 2006 under the 1998 Nazi War Crimes Disclosure Act show that the CIA organized stay-behind networks of German agents between 49 to 53, according to the Washington Post. Quote, one network included 2 former Nazi SS members, Staff Sergeant Heinrich Hoffmann and Lieutenant Colonel Hans Ruse, and it was run by Walter Kropp, former German army officer. Some of you know him, referred to by the CIA as the unreconstructed Nazi. The network was disbanded in 1953 amid political concerns that some members' neo-Nazi sympathies would be exposed in the West German press. Kind of ironic, laughable, not so much, but you just see the same things happening over and over again. The support of Nazis and other radicals, and the summary execution and assassinations of political figures. That's what's happening in Ukraine right now. Under the advisory of the CIA, the FBI, and other private military and security contractors like Blackwater, now Academy, and others that are providing that assistance, that leadership. Honestly, when you look at the Ukrainian military, I mean, pretty under modernized, and most of the guys just, initially because they didn't feel, I guess, it didn't feel that what was happening was legitimate, and that they were watching a coup. I think that's, people try to say, well, they just didn't, they didn't have the same amount of allegiance to, the state, or these guys are just traitorous because they wanted to defect to Russia. Over 1 million Ukrainians have defected, and more pouring out by the day because of the, just barbaric attack on the people. But it's very similar to what happened with Operation Gladio. And as the years go on, we're going to find out more and more about it through declassifications and more of the U.S.'s role. And we're going to probably find, what most people already assume. And, I try to make sure that I'm not just, jumping the gun and, connecting dots that aren't necessarily there. And because I want people to really think about these things objectively. I'm not on some bandwagon to blame the U.S. for all the ills of the world, but proper credit has to go to those that deserve it. So there's a lot to be said there. So when looking at the Paris attacks, there's a lot of questions I ask, and more and more, as I hear more and more, as we learn more and more, the more I seem to doubt the official story. And there are just too many other things that are happening right now that are being really pushed with this event to think that that it's completely organic. And if it is, we should be addressing all of the missteps and the complete failures of these institutions that we've built. Interestingly enough, Ron Paul wrote a scathing piece, a really long piece that we published at blacklistednews.com on the reality. He says, quote, reality is now setting in for America. It was all based on lies and ignorance. And it couldn't be, more in agreement with Ron Paul here on this take, that if you look at post-2001, the legislation through fear and what that produced has it completely eviscerated the credibility of America, this country. It has economically bankrupted and morally bankrupted this country on many levels, not just with the police and the police state against the people, but really the U.S. on a national stage. To the contrary of what people at the State Department would like you to believe, it's actually isolating the U.S. in more and more ways and is going to continue to be a burden on generations to come. The derivatives, the amount of debt that has been accrued in just the last I can't believe that we're already, 6 years past the huge crises that in the economic and banking industries that have led us to a path of, in Europe, austerity, harsh austerity, and the redistribution of wealth and political power to an unelected technocrat society is just unparalleled. And the amount of debt that has been redistributed to the people, the bottom 98% of people in this country, is unfathomable. And so all of that was based upon really bad solutions that were pre-planned as a way to, I wouldn't go as far as to say, I don't want to be that guy saying enslave America, but it has economically and morally bankrupted this country. And it was all predicated to us and sold to the American people, average Joes, as with lies and as something that was true and legitimate. And we found out people initially had the few voices, the scarce voices out there that were daring enough, brought attention to the complete lack of any real plan to bring justice forward after 9/11. So they legislated insanity and built a domestic police state that is and continues to be an epic failure. I can't say how. I mean, even if you are an apologist for the state and you don't believe that the state would act, and I mean that not just the U.S. state, but that agents of the state would not kill and maim their own citizens for political power and leveraging. I mean, you need to read David Rothkopf's, I'm not sure if it's his latest book, but Superclass, breaking down, the 6,000 people that ultimately do run the world. I mean, if you're one of the 6,000, you're one in a million. 1 in a million people are part of the superpower elite, if you will. They are the upper 1% of the 1%. They are the people that are Bilderbergers, that are part of the Council on Foreign Relations, that are part of the power players and brokers at Brookings and Freedom House, that are intertwined with intelligence agencies and those that really do operate the deep state. And so out of those superpower elite, there are a lot of vying interests and a lot of different agendas that play out. So when you have that many people, I mean, statistically, 1 out of 27, I think it is, of those people are going to be psychopaths, and you just never know which one's going to be a titan of industry, political prodigy. It's hard to say, but I mean, we haven't addressed the lies. We haven't addressed the real problems, and I mean, nothing scores it better than looking at what's happened in Afghanistan. We went to Iraq, and for reasons that nobody can really explain. Oh, they had weapons of mass destruction, not the ones that you were looking for. They had lots of weapons, and most countries do, and the U.S. has plenty of weapons of mass destruction, and that doesn't change the way I put on my pants in the morning. So, for all of those apologists, oh well, there were those weapons, Doug. Those weapons are everywhere, and many of them were sold to them by Western military companies, with State Department, with military approval. So, if we haven't learned anything, then I don't know what this Paris attack could be, other than another tactic in the strategy of tension. And it's being used that way regardless. It is part of the strategy of tension, and only serves ultimately the people that benefit. Cui bono? I mean, that's what you ask. I think that that's a great question. Pepe Escobar has a great piece that I read over at RT that is worth the read and brings up some relevant questions. And I think that if you look at what happened after 9/11, they're comparing this attack to, saying that this is France's 9/11, comparing it, which I don't think that you can make that comparison, period. There's a difference between, some people being targeted and assassinated and 3,000 of them being killed for no reason, ultimately, in my mind. No good reason, anyway. So completely different, but the emergency legislating when you're, in fear and when you are seeking revenge. And that's, what you hear from Dick Cheney, all of the neoconservatives and others that are trying to keep their asses out of the clink for war crimes and can't travel freely, like Henry Kissinger. That's what they're saying. Well, we wanted to go get those bastards. Well, we have a revenge government that is really good at targeting people and killing them. 50 more Syrian civilians killed with drones. Airstrike hit just another day in the empire. It's a story, it's a headline. There's a few comments on Blacklisted News, but it's nothing out of the norm. So what's happening? Where are we going in 2015? Obama has now tapped the Treasury for the head of the CIA. Intelligence banksters, that's right. Mr. David Cohen, who is a top Treasury official specializing in terrorism and financial intelligence, is going to be the head of the CIA. He's going to be the deputy director, and he is going to now take on that position. Cohen, who's an attorney, he's a lawyer, of course, has overseen U.S. sanctions policies for the Treasury. So he's into economic warfare. He was in charge of finding and thwarting financial support lines for terrorist organizations and drug traffickers. I laugh, right? Because, these are the same drug traffickers that Eric Holder is arming through Fast and Furious and other secret projects that are being run out of the State Department. I digress. So he's going after the drug traffickers and money launderers. Not doing a good job with ISIS. But anyway, celebrating failure and giving people kudos and basing their positions on lies, basically what Ron Paul said, is where we're at today. He's going to replace the deputy director, Avril Haines, who is joining the White House as Obama's deputy national security advisor. So basically a guy to take a bunch of crap. And that just happened. So interesting. The focus now, the intelligence agencies, we know are intimately involved in banking and terrorism 101. We know that many of the banks were laundering drug money and had to do that in 2008 and actually attribute that to the ability to stay afloat. I think it's France. Is it France? Or it's France and it might be Italy. One of the other romantic European countries has now decided to literally cook the books, and they're putting illicit drug dealing or drug purchases and prostitution into the GDP. So, what does that say? Basically, you have to cook the books and make it look better than it really is. And it's more honest, but just think about that for a moment. We have people that get raided and that are, attacked by the police state in this country for minor possessions. But, the economic terrorism as well as the, outright funding and support of governments through drug politics. That's what, the support of the Sinaloa cartel is in South America and Mexico. That's what the Golden Triangle was during Vietnam and running that through Cambodia, and I can go on and on. Present day Afghanistan. It's amazing that we spent $4 billion to eradicate opium, and now they have bumper crops. What did they spend the $4 billion on? Buying them farm equipment? I don't know, this rogue ISIS farm equipment just showed up here. These guys just started getting John Deere equipment. Now I don't know where they got all that John Deere equipment. It's like these Ford pickups that are being auctioned in the U.S. and then popping up in the Middle East, and with guns mounted and ISIS flags. You're like, that shouldn't happen, should it? But don't worry, folks. This guy's going to get to the bottom of it, and he's going to make sure it doesn't happen anymore, if you believe that. Anyway, I think that it's pretty foreboding, but it's worth mentioning that there's a new bulletin that came out of the fusion centers, the Colorado one to be specific, the CIAC. They're disseminating this. It's an awareness bulletin, and you should give it a look at. Basically, they are recommending that all police officers eliminate their social media footprint. And this is what France is doing too. So it's kind of interesting that it's happening in concert. But this is just a report that came from public intelligence, and basically tells cops how to, and other people in government, how to erase their media footprint and to remove documents about home ownership and other ways that people could find out personal information and to target and attack police officers. Not only that, they don't want, of course, police officers on social media espousing their own personal opinions on the Constitution, or who are thugs and slime balls and who deserves to be beaten. The police departments across this country have been taking on a new reality, and that is that it's a PR war on the streets. Videos that have disseminated from YouTube with the recent protests in Ferguson and other protests as of late. I mean, a few years ago, anti-war protest where people were being shot with rubber bullets, and there was one that's very memorable where there's this lady just standing out there with a sign. She's a school teacher. This was during some of these protests in Illinois and Chicago over school teacher pay, and the police officer shoots her with a rubber bullet, and they're all giggling, and she's like, hey, who shot me? Mother, you shot me. You shot an innocent, unarmed woman. And, you hear these guys giggling about it. Well, you don't want them going to Twitter. Not only that, I mean, it's kind of a liability if you have police officers, going out there and putting information about their opinions or other, their side of the story on YouTube or on social media. It could turn into, a treasure trove of evidence for those suing police departments and those seeking to have police officers removed from their jobs. So I guess it's just kind of a telling sign that, that the mood has changed so much towards, an anti-police kind of division or a sentiment among people. F the police is becoming ever more popular. So much so that they would actually release this document encouraging, if not almost telling police and other people in government to basically maintain a low profile. Don't let people know that you're a cop. You shouldn't be proud of it. That's a sad state where, police officers and people that are first responders and others that work in the public's interest. And that's what they should be. I mean, they are peace officers. They are public servants. They should be, I think, not revered, not God-like, not, I mean, there's one public school that we'll talk about here that's got a special dress in blue day to thank cops for all that they do. I don't think that they should be glorified or hero worshipped, but people should, I think, give them the respect that they deserve for a job that they do that in many circumstances and instances is pretty selfless. And, I think more along the line of traffic cops and how risky it has to be standing out there during a traffic accident. And those people that have to, pick up bodies off the ground because, somebody was text messaging their way into a 15-car pileup. Think about those people. And, I don't know what you get paid, but it's not enough to, stand out there on the hot asphalt and hope that you don't get run over as you're trying to divert people and trying to save people's lives. I mean, those people you have to give respect to, but it's become more of a worship of the state itself, the shield, the badge, rather than this is what it's morphed into, at least in this country, and the political and media focus is either demonizing the police, which brings people farther and farther away, polarizing issues like police, race relations, police issues that we have, policing issues, and the general public that they should be working to serve. So you have that, and then you have other, I think schools and other government institutions that are trying to do everything they can, because I think that there's definitely been a shift in the zeitgeist when it comes to policing and what we expect from police in the community. That's really been shaken up, and it's not just the poor people, it's not just the ethnic people that are feeling those tensions and have that sentiment. We're seeing more and more of that across the socioeconomic spectrum as well. People that are not poor and not living in places where there's more violence and you're more apt to be targeted by police in violent situations. Even those people are starting to question police themselves. And I've always maintained that it's not the police themselves, the individuals, although we have to be, when you have people that are dealing with other people, you have to understand that everybody snaps, everybody has a bad day. Some people are good people and some people aren't. Some people are good people and they change. And sometimes they happen to be cops. And so you shouldn't hero worship or, blindly give allegiance to anyone that has that kind of power. I mean, it's a special duty. You've given a person a special power. And that's what it is. When you deputize a police officer, we give them the benefit of the doubt. We give them a badge. We give them a gun. And so it's not to attack police or to, and I hate, the thought that everything has to be so micromanaged that you just, basically are creating this gotcha society where everybody's just, I got you. You said something nasty to me. I got you. Because, that sucks. And nobody wants to live in a world where every meta issue is heavily scrutinized to the point where, life's not enjoyable anymore. And, there are those people, you probably have to deal with them, that just love to give you a rash of crap. And that's all, that they have to look forward to. Those people exist. They're out there. They are amongst the many. You have to deal with them. But anyway, so I see these stories about, these kids that are, and I hate it. I turn on the television from time to time. I like watching sports. I love watching PBS, and they have great documentaries and information that, is really valuable. I mean, they do a lot of stuff with, independent people, gardening. I mean, it goes on, but you still have to watch all of this, the military sagas and people that have been blown up, and it's all the violence of war, and it's constantly being shoved in your face that we should feel sorry for the people out there that are getting blown up because, now it's our duty to take care of them. And, it's our duty to make sure that people aren't thrown into a meat grinder pointlessly. I mean, that's much more patriotic, rather than, feeling bad for the victims, which you should. I mean, we should feel bad for the victims, the people that have been, touched by, have been affected by, IED blasts and, the horrors of war. I can't think of anybody else that deserves our respect more. But I see these things. I saw a guy the other day that had a bumper sticker. If you haven't been there, you shouldn't have an opinion. Just because you blindlessly went into some area that you were probably only mildly familiar with and shot people up, or rounded up local people, local friendlies, and who knows what you did over there. Maybe you worked IT and you saw some pretty horrible stuff, but you weren't kicking down doors in Fallujah. Whatever the case may be, I mean, the people that blindly do, and they're forced to do those things, I think that we should remember them, because they are the front door to, they are the first responders to bad policy. They're the people that died in Iraq, and there's just no good reason for it. The 500,000, was it 500,000? I always have to remember. Yeah, 500,000 dead Iraqi children, part of, Operation Medal of Freedom. Yeah. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Madeleine Albright won a Medal of Freedom, and she was the one that said that it was well worth it, the U.S. policy, to kill 500,000 Iraqi children. So, when people think about that, just imagine that. I mean, that sounds like the most cruel, insane thing that anybody could ever say. Well, 1 in 26 is a psychopath. She's probably one of those 1 in a million as well. Anyway, I guess, I digressed a little there too as well, but that's what I like to do on the show. I like to jump around, hit topics, talk about things that have recently interested me. I want to thank all of you that continue to listen to this show, because you find it interesting as well. And the interaction, the fact that so many of you do write in and support the show, which is commercial free, as you may have noticed. If you're new to it, we use the value for value model. If you find this show informative, entertaining, if you find that it is something that's worthy of your interest, then you can donate to the show. You can support or bring attention to things that you do, from your own artwork to your own business, by supporting us. We do give credit to those that make financial contributions. It's not even as greasy as PBS that pretends to underwrite things. Oh, we have underwriters. That's not advertising. I mean, how disingenuous is that? I always hear, it's funny because it's got to blow these people's minds. I've said it before, but when they see, some show on salmon and climate change, and it's brought to you by the Koch brothers on PBS. Anyway, there's commercials in all of that. We don't do that. That's one of the few things that I think is a huge problem. And it's a waste of time, wasting people's precious time as they commute, as they listen to this show. Is a slap in your face to sell you to somebody who's going to sell you a product that you don't necessarily want. So that's why we don't do it, and that's why we've taken on the model. Not getting rich, not even getting close, but we're able to sleep at night. And you know that you out there are the only lobbyist for the show. You're the only person that we're interested in speaking to. There's no other corporate advertisers that are speaking to a demographic that steers us one way or another. And I hope that you guys continue to listen to it live here on Sunday evenings at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And, well, with that, I bid you all adieu. I'll be back next week, Sunday night, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time for another live edition of Blacklisted Radio. And I hope you will join me as well. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at BLN Radio. That is the handle. YouTube channel, Spreaker Radio. We even have a Roku channel. You can find all of those on the right-hand side of blacklistednews.com. There's a lot of ways to connect with us, as well as the newsletter. I'll have this produced and up and ready for you by your morning commute. So if you missed the beginning. You can catch it then. And until next time, everybody, thank you so much. Continue to let people know about the show. That's the number one way you can really support us. And it is the one way that we can reach more people, because we don't have corporate advertisers that are interested in selling their message. I've already said that. So with that, everybody have a great evening and take care.